All right, welcome to the Forge Bootcamp. This is the second day of our event. All right, so my name is João Martins, I'm a Forge developer advocate, and I'm going to cover this tutorial with you today. About the event, we have 4 days, including 4 tutorials from our page, learnforge.autodesk.io. And we have parallel tracks for Node.js and .NET. This one is using .NET. We are going to use .NET Core. And we have also at the same time one using Node.js, in this case with Michael. All right, I see there is a question here. I'll answer it later. During a session, we'll have almost 30 minutes of sessions. And I'm going to code and show you what you need to do on the next break. And between the sessions, you do the same steps, right? Between the sessions, you submit your questions. Please use the Q&A so it gets organized and everyone can take advantage of your questions and our answers. And don't be bashful, all right? This is the schedule for the whole week. Yesterday, we made a quick sample, a basic sample to upload a file, translate, and preview the 2D and 3D design on our browser. Today, we are going to build an application really similar, relatively similar, but in this case, we are going to connect with one of our platforms, such as Fusion Team, Bin360 Docs, or ACC. Tomorrow, you can choose from one of the applications that we build, either the one we are going to build today or the one built tomorrow. And you are going to customize the viewer using your custom extensions and also add dashboards to this application. And on the last day of our bootcamp, which is Thursday, we're going to modify our designs with design automation. As I already said, this is the second day. We're going to assess our designs in Fusion Team, Bin360 Docs, or ACC. And this is the goal for the day. We have an application where you sign in with your Autodesk account. And by that, you are going to have access to all of the hubs that you can see based on your user, all right? From there, you can select folders, specific version of files, specific projects, and render these versions on the viewer in your browser, all right? Here's the agenda for today's training. First of all, we have intro and setup. On session 2, we have the basic server and authentication. As you're going to see, this authentication that we are dealing with today is relatively different from the one we did yesterday. We are going to do a 3-legged authentication today. I'm going to show you on the next session what I mean by that. On session 3, we are going to list all of the hubs, projects, and user information. And on session 4, we are going to build our client side and load our modules using Viewer, all right? So let's start with session 1. As first step, we are going to need a Forge account, a Forge application. So I'm going to show in a few seconds how we can do that. And also, in this case, we are going to need to access one of these 3 options here. Or if you have access to all of these platforms, you can add your application on all of that. We are going to add, in my case, I'm going to add on a Bin360 hub, all right? And later on, we are going to have access to this hub containing all of the projects that my user have visibility. For development, I'm going to use Visual Studio, the community version 2019. And so in order to follow the steps I'm going to show you right here, you need the same environment. So please, if you don't have it already, download it and include the workloads for ASP.NET web development and also desktop development. Okay, enough talking. Now let's go do it. First of all, for the Forge account, you can create your account. If you don't have it already, click on sign in to sign up to try Forge. If you have already created your account, you can click on sign in button. Let me click here. And now I'm going to use my testing account. All right. In my case, I have a few applications, including the one we built yesterday. But just for this demo, I'm going to create a new one. If you are creating for the first time, you're going to see this page empty. You're going to see no applications, all right? So click on create an app, provide the app name. I'm going to only replace this by app2. Or a description, and we need a callback URL. This is the default value that we always use for our samples, our demos. I'm going to paste it on our chat window so everyone can have access to it. And this is what our server is going to use to give back our token, to retrieve our token. I'll cover this in details on session 2. All right. And here at the bottom of our page, we have all of the available APIs that our Forge app is going to use. All right. It's going to be able to use. I'm going to let all of them selected, and you don't need to worry about that because the consumption is not based on which APIs you have selected, but the consumption is based on which services you use. If you use a service that generates consumption, that consumes cloud credits, you have consumption. If not, no worries, all right? So let's just click on create an app. And as everything is correct, now we can see our application. This is what we're going to need, the client ID and mostly the client secret. These are the credentials of our Forge application, all right? The client ID is just like a login, and client secret is just like a password. The client ID we're going to use to connect right now, to connect to Beam360 Hub, and the client secret must remain secret. We're going to use only on our application. So, and if it gets exposed, you can click on regenerate, and our system is automatically going to regenerate one for you. So now let's cover the second part, adding our Forge app to a Beam360 account. We can go under our Beam360 docs. I already signed in here. As I'm you need to be an account admin to do these steps, all right? You have to go on the account admin page. Oh, my session got expired, so I have to sign in again. All right. Right now, we need to go under settings and custom integrations. Here you can see all of the available apps that are connected to our application. And if we click on add custom integration, we are able to add our Forge app, all right? As in this case, I'm the developer. So I click on add. I have to check this checkbox right here, saying that I have saved the account ID information. And here I have to paste my client ID for my Forge app. I need to provide an app name. Let me call it Bootcamp Day 2. I put my initials here. App for you tutorial. And now we hit save. And okay, my app is active. Now this app can access that Bing360 account, all right? Cool. Now the last step of our demonstration is how to acquire Visual Studio. If we go to visualstudio.microsoft.com, accept all. All right. If you go under this button right here, you have the option to download the community version. If you don't have it, do it right now because it might take some time. All right, we are going to need that for the next steps. So to summarize, we're going to need the Forge application provided to a Bing360 account or any other that you prefer, and also the Visual Studio Community 2019 with both of the workloads. And that's what I need from you right now for the next step. All right, we have 1.5 hours. Feel free to drop your questions. Please fill Q&A. I already have one here, but regarding the yesterday's training, so I'm going to answer it right now. That's it. See you in a few hours, in 1 hour and a half, sorry. And recording. All right, time's up. Let's move to session 2, basic server and authentication. But first of all, we have a few questions here. Forest, I don't have access to Bing360, so I'm using Fusion Team. Do I need to authorize my Forge app to connect? Specific for Fusion Team, there is no need for that workflow that I showed you before. That's specific for Bing360 docs and ACC, all right? And you post it here. Only for Bing360 docs, yes, you saw it. And also Enrique Galicia. I'm hoping that I said your name right. So to deserialize as JSON the version file from Bing360 item. All right. Every time we are going to cover this on session 3, but a preview. Every time we are retrieving a data from our endpoint, from our API, our SDK is going to return as a dynamic object. All right. So you can use JSON in some case, but we mostly use dynamic dictionary item and use a key value pair with a string as a key and a dynamic object as a response. All right. This will be clear when we go to the session 3. And documentation, I'm going to send you the documentation after we finish this session. All right, so first of all, we have this basic diagram of our application that we are going to build today. We basically have a server providing HTML and all of our static files used on client side to render our one-page application. Through this one-page application, we are going to reach the server endpoints responsible for accessing the Forge APIs. On the client side, we also have the viewer library provided by Autodesk to render our model that got translated from our platform, all right? And here is the workflow of the authentication method that we are going to use today. How does this works? We have our app, first of all, is going to redirect the end user to the Autodesk login page. And on this redirection, we need to provide two entities. We need to provide the client ID of our Forge application, and also all of the scopes that are required. we are going to see in a few minutes what I mean by that. We can provide scopes for viewing data, for writing data, and for deleting all of the data of this end user on the platform. On the Forge login page, after the login, the user is going to consent for our application to use this data. And then we are going to receive through our callback URL with authorization code. With this authorization code, we reach the Forge authorization server again, and we get back the token. And with this token, we can perform all of our activities. The token expires after 1 hour. And after this 1 hour, we are going to use one field called refresh token. Why do we use refresh token for two-legged authentication? In a two-legged authentication, we can simply get a new token. But in this case, imagine each hour, the user would have to make the login again and again and again. So for that not to happen, we use the refresh token, which is valid for 14 days, right? And you need to keep in mind that if I use a redirect token, a refresh token, I receive a new token and a new refresh token. At this point, the previous refresh token is invalid, all right? So we need to keep that in mind. Now we have the steps for this session. We need to create a new project using the ASP.NET Core Web App template. We are going to use .NET Core 3.1, set up the environment variables, create the basic server. We are going to make some changes on startup.cs, and we are going to create the authentication controller. Let's go do it then. Here we have our application that we're going to build today on LearnForge. And first step, we need to click on create a server. We are always going to use .NET Core. And in here, now we need to continue the steps on Visual Studio Community 2019. We select create a new project. And we are going with this template here, ASP.NET Core empty, all right? This is a good moment to take a screenshot so you don't get the wrong one by mistake. You can get to this template by selecting C# as language and web. All right, so we click on next, and I'm gonna call it Forge sample hub. I already have a Forge sample from today's training. I'll use this location by default and place the solution and project in the same directory. We are always using .NET Core 3.1. It is the long-term support version. Next step, we click on create our server, all right? Just a few seconds. And that's it, here we go. Now we have our application. It should, when you create, it should comes with all of these properties, all right? You should have only dependencies, properties, app settings.json, program.cs, and startup.cs. If you have more than that, you probably selected the wrong template. Let's get back to our tutorial. Now we need to add our SDKs. First of all, Autodesk Forge. And to add it, we go on our project, right click on that, select Manage NuGet Packages. You need to browse. Here, we just need to paste the value that you just got from our tutorial. And we should go with this first one right here, Autodesk.Forge version, latest stable version 1.9.0. We click on install, accept these dependencies. And if we check right here under dependencies and packages, we have our SDK. Same for the Newton Soft library. Again, first one. Now there's a tricky part. You should always go with a version compatible with your .NET Core, right, framework. As we are using .NET Core 3.1, we should use this one right here, 3.1.19. We select install, okay for the dependency, accept license, and we are good to go. Now, next step, we need to add our environment variables. We use environment variables because it is compatible to host systems such as Heroku that we use a lot here, and also AWS, Azure, but feel free to change that. First of all, ASP.NET Core underline URLs. And to add our environment variables, we can select project and Forge sample hub properties. Under debug, here we have our environment variables, all right? Let me add one. And the value we can get from our tutorial. Now we have a client ID. We should get the same client ID from our Forge application that we just created. Now it's time for the client secret. There's too many things open here. Secret. Again, this time is with a single click, it gets copied. And now the callback URL. This time we are going to use the callback URL. So it must be the same from the tutorial you're going to use on your app and from our Forge application. This callback URL is the address that the Forge server is going to give back the authorization code, right? So let's go here, copy and paste. It always comes with a random port. So let's go with 3000. And finally, you can check if everything is the same here. All right, sounds good. Sounds good. Everything's working. And we save it. And next step. Now we need to open the startup.cs. And as a first step, we should add this namespace here for the MVC. Startup.cs. Add this namespace and save. We should also get rid of the default content on under the startup class. So we just delete this here and paste the content from our tutorial. All right, here we have basic sample, a basic configuration, just like we did yesterday. Add Newton Soft JSON, compatibility for version 3.1 of .NET Core, and add use MVC, static files, and default files. This is just a default for ASP.NET Core applications. We are going to add on session 4 our wroot folder containing the JS, CSS, and the index.html, right? And finally, we create a controllers folder. Under our project. So we right click on the name of the project, add new folder. This is the name, controllers. Great. Next step, authorization. Authorization, again, is made through the three-legged token. The three-legged token takes in consideration the permission that the user has, plus the permission of your application. All right, so I added on the session 1 our brand new Forge application to a hub. So, but I am added in that hub with visibility to, as I remember, 2 projects only. So when I use this application, this Forge app, and my login, my account, I'm only going to be able to see these 2 projects, all right? Let's go with .NET Core. And now we need to create the OAuth controller. We right click on the folder called controllers. We select add controller, API controller empty. And now we paste the name, OAuth controller. Okay. Once more, we get rid of the default content. And we paste the content of our tutorial. Let's take a look at what we have here. Remember the diagram that I showed you? First of all, we need to redirect our user to Forge login, to Autodesk login page. This is made through this endpoint right here. When we redirect the user, we are going to provide a specific URL for this sign in, and also we are going to provide the client ID of our application. The code, we are going to specify that we are waiting for the code to get the token. We are going to provide also the callback URL. The callback URL is the address for the server to send the authentication code, all right? And also the scopes. The scopes means the permission of this token. In this case, the tokens would have permission to read the viewables. Viewables are the translated files to render our model on the browser, to write data, create data, and read data. After that, we are going to receive the token, the code, the authorization code, sorry, on this endpoint here, which is the callback, all right? After that, we are going to call this function, create from code at async. Let's see the definition, create from code async. And this function is going to retrieve two tokens. One token, which is internal. The internal one has more permission because it's not shared with our clients. And the second one would have only the viewables read scope because it's passed to our browser to render our files through viewer, all right? So we get this one for all of the services, the tasks, such as reading all of our hubs, all of our projects, all of our files and folders, and these ones just to read just to render our derivative model. We store them on these objects, credentials. We store the refresh token. This is cool. Please note that we are using the refresh token from the public credential because it's the last one we got, right? And the expires at to check if the token is valid or not. After that, we append to the cookies, the serialized credentials. So every time we get to this app, we are going to check first from the session. So we don't have to keep logging in every time, all right? Let's go back. It's all right. All right, so in this case, it's going to, after that, we are going to be redirected to the main page. We have a function to retrieve the public token. This is going to be used. This is the only function that is exposed, as you can see by the endpoint right here. All of the others are Oh no, sorry, this is a different controller. Made a mistake. This is for to retrieve the public token. First of all, we get from session and we check. We have two options. We don't have a token, or if it's expired, or else the token is valid and we get the credentials. We have the function to sign out our application. This is basically going to delete the cookies. And let's see if something missing. That's it, get the client ID from our environment variables. All right, now we can do a basic check to see if everything is working. I'm going to reach this endpoint right here, all right? We can click on IIS Express to load our application. A few seconds. And we received an error because we don't have an application, an index page yet. So let's use this endpoint right here and paste it. All right, here we are. Now we are going to return to our client the URL that we are going to, for us to sign in. And here we have, this is the URL. You can see, this is the URL redirected, and these are the parameters. The scopes, callback, client ID. We can't force it to log in as we don't have an application yet. We can force a login by mimicking what our application is going to do. Simply paste it here. And let me add a breakpoint on our callback so we can see what's going on. Here, as I'm already logged in, I don't need to sign in again. So it's just so I just need to consent the application to read my data, write my data, and read my variables. All right. So I'm going to allow it, and right here we have our authorization code. This is going to exchange the code from a specific token to get the token. And right here now, I have my credentials. All right. I have the refresh token expires at 1 hour from now. This is my time here from my system. The internal token and the public token. Correct. It's going to redirect us to the main page, but as you don't have any, it's going to return an error. Okay. Now is your turn, up to you. Create, these are the steps. You need to create a new project using .NET Core 3.1, set up the environment variables, create the basic server, changing the startup.cs, and create the authentication controller. All right. Are you able to do it? You have 1.5 hours. So if you have any questions, use the Q&A, please. See you in some minutes. Okay, so now we can start the session 3. This next step, we are going to create 2 controllers for Listening Hubs project and user information. As I can see, all of the questions were answered. So anything else? No? Okay, if not, oh, there's one question here. The completed sample project and not the same error as before. Translation does not work. All right, Leslie, if the translation is not working, could you please try with one of the sample files from our Revit sample projects? That might be the best case. And also in these cases, this is useful. You can try loading your translating your file through viewer.com. That's strange. Okay, I will go back to you after this session. Okay, let's move on. Now we have two steps: adding the router for data management endpoints, the data management controllers for listing hubs, projects, and files. And last, we are going to add the router for user information retrieval, which is the user controller.cs. Okay, let's go do it. We stop it at this point right here. We have the OAuth controller in our server, all right? So now we can click on the list hubs and projects. All right, here we need a good, a little explanation. Our hubs, even if you're using independent, if you're using Bin360 Docs, Fusion Team, or ACC, we have all of these layers containing our files. We have, first of all, a hub, which is the specific hub that we are connecting to. Like in my case, it's a Bin360 hub. Under this hub, we have all of its projects, all right? And under the projects, each of the projects, we can have two fields, two entities here. We can have folders or items. And an item is meaning all of the files, all of the versions associated with a specific file, right? Each time we upload a version for a file, they are going to be stored in the same item, right? And a folder can contain other folders or items. So that is the level that we have inside our hubs. This is just the same explanation. Oh yeah, and at the end, we are going we have also the buckets and objects. Each of our version is going to be stored in a specific bucket, as a different file, all right? Let's go. Now we select .NET Core. And we can create our data management controller. We should go to our project, and under controllers folder, we right click on that, select add, controller, API controller empty, and we paste the name from our tutorial. Now, same thing again. We get rid of the default content, and we copy the content from our tutorial and paste it. Okay, right here. We have a lot of errors because there are some classes and functions missing for this class, for this controller. But what this is doing, this controller only have one endpoint, one function accessed by our client side, which is this get node 3 node as async. As you remember from our from our first session, our application will have two columns. The first one on the left will have the tree of all of our hubs, projects, folders, and items and versions. And on the right, we'll have the viewer, which is going to render each of our version, depending on which one we select. Every time we select a specific node from our tree, it is going to call this function. The first node, the root node for our folder will have this hash ID. So on the runtime, the first time this function gets called, it's going to get called with this hash value as this parameter ID. And by that, we are going to get all of the hubs associated with this three-legged token. All right, remember, our Forge app is going to be added to specific hubs, and I, as a user, the users that's going to be logged in, have visibility to specific hubs inside of that. We have the interception being retrieved right here on the GitHub async. And the same for the projects, contents, folders, and versions, all right, depending on the user permission. If we call this endpoint with from a hub, we're going to retrieve all of the projects inside the hub. If you call it from a project, we are going to retrieve all of the project contents, the top folders. If you call it with a folder, we get the folder contents. And if you call it with an item, which means all of the versions associated with a specific file, we get the item versions, all right? Now, we can copy the missing content from our class. Here we have all of the functions from our controller, and we need to add them inside our data management controller class, all right? So inside here we go. Let's take a look at what we just got here. This function is always returning this class, a list of JS3 nodes. This JS3 node is the node of the items that are going to be rendered on our application, all right? If I call it with, oh, sorry, I got the wrong function. Right here, JS3 node, all right. If you call it to retrieve all of the hubs associated, we can go to the definition, and it is done by this line right here, get hubs async. And we have all of these three different types for hubs. You can have a A360, a core hub, or Bin360. ACC hub can have is going to fall under this case right here. So if you add an ACC hub, it's going to get built at the same way. And here we are returning the tree node regarding this hub, right? Now, if you call it with an hub, we need to retrieve all of the projects associated. This is done by this function, get projects async. Let's go to definition here. Oh, also note that we are always using the internal token. Remember, internal token has more scopes. The public token has only scope to view the viewables, the derivatives, to render a SVF on the viewer. On this line right here, we are returning all of the projects. And also, Enrique made a question regarding how we are dealing with these returns. This is always a dynamic object, as you can see right here. And we are always using a for each loop with a key value par as a string for the key, and the value is the dynamic object, all right? We have two kinds of projects, in this case, core Bin360 project, and we are going to return that. We can also call this function with a folder. In this case, we are going to get all of the folder contents. Again, internal token, once more. Here we are retrieving the folder contents, and there are some verifications. For instance, which content of the folder is visible for the user. And also we need some specific treatment for the contents inside the plans folder, because the plans folder is not going to show the structure as the same way as we have all of our items and versions, all right? Apart from that, we are simply returning the folder content. Can it be a file or a folder, another folder? And also, last but not least, we have the item versions. When we call this endpoint from an item, we need to get all of its versions to render on our object tree. Let's go to definition. And here, once more, internal token. Here we are returning all of the versions, all right? And also we are dealing with the case here that two more things, important things. We need to encode this URN to pass to viewer. Viewer needs the encoded base64 encoded URN. And also we need to check if our item has some viewable. If we are talking about a Revit file, of course, it's going to be translated and you can read it. But in case of a Revit, you can also store Revit zip files or doc files. So in this case, there's nothing to show using viewer, all right? Here's the base64 encode function. And here is the JS3 node class that's going to be returning for each of our elements. All right. Now that everything is explained, we can get to the next controller. Next controller is just to retrieve the user information. We are going to retrieve also the user information, the username and the thumbnail. We can retrieve the thumbnail of the user. So let's first of all create this controller, user controller.cs. So we right click on the controller's page, select add controller, API controller empty. Now we paste user controller. Once more, we get rid of the default content. And we copy and paste the content from our tutorial. All right, here we have only one function to return the user profile, all right? Now that we have everything together, we can do a basic check as we did on session 2. We can get the result for both of these endpoints. First of all, I'm gonna call the endpoint to retrieve all of the buckets associated with my login, all right? With my three-legged token. For that, we need to click on IIS Express. And we have an error because we don't have an index page yet, but we can reach our brand new controller endpoint. But for that, we also need to provide to force to fall under this case right here with an ID of a hash. If I call it like that, we get an error because we have a null value. Right? So we are going to fall under this else case, but we have no ID. So it should return us an error. Yes, okay. So we can go to URL encode and pass the hash value. Now we can pass this value as the ID. Now we have the hash value, and we are going to return. Token is invalid or expired. All right, I need to get a new token. So let's first of all retrieve the token. I forgot about that. Let's get the token. Now I need to grant permission for our application. And I think I removed the breakpoint, but that's no problem with that. Now it is stored. And now we might be able to reach this endpoint. This percentage 23. Let me copy here. I always prefer copying than typing. All right. Now we should return it. And as you can see, I have one hub, the one that I added on the first session. All right. Now we can check this endpoint right here to retrieve the user profile. Okay, we follow here. We are using the token internal. And here we have our response, my name and my picture from my profile. All good. Now is your turn. Add both of these controller, data management controller and user controller. And post your questions if you have any, post your doubts. I'm going to paste this page that I used to URL encode our hash symbol. So you can do the same checking. And I see you to end our application on session 4. All right? Around 2 p.m. PST. See you. Bye. See you soon. Bye. All good. We are good to start our last session. Session 4, loading our models into viewer. Before that, we have any questions? Sorry. Before that, we have any questions? No. I think everything was covered. So let's keep moving. We have 4 steps this time. We are going to create the index.html, main.css, forge tree, and forge viewer. All right. Now it's time for our demo. And you might be wondering why we don't have the translator this time, because when we use the viewer models tutorial, we need to translate from the original file. I'm always using Rabbit files to SVF, which is the format that viewers uses to render, all right? So we don't have to do that because Bing 360 and ACC already do that by default. When you upload a file, it gets translated. So apart from there, you can render your file in viewer with viewer. Let's go to our last session. Viewer is a client-side library, so based on pure HTML and JavaScript. So we are going to build our client-side, our one-page application. As always, we choose .NET Core, and now we need to create our default structures for ASP.NET applications, starting by the wroot folder. So we go on our project. We can right-click on the name of our project. We go to Add, New Folder, www. Oh, I have a caps lock. www. Root folder. And once we create this folder, the icon is going to change, showing us that this is a default folder for ASP.NET environments. And also, inside this folder, we need to create 2 more, CSS and JS. So we can right-click on the folder, select Add, New Folder, CSS, and the same thing, but now with JS. Now we can click on next, and we can add our content to our library. We are going to use mainly 3 libraries for our project: jQuery for the manipulation, Bootstrap for styling, and JS3, which is the library used for rendering our objects tree, or our tree of hubs, projects, folders, files, not items, and versions, right? So first of all, let's create our index.html. We need to create it inside our wroot folder. So we go to add, new item, HTML page, and we paste the name from our tutorial. As always, it comes with this default content, so we get rid of that, and we copy the content from our tutorial. If you are starting right now from scratch, go with your version 7. Only go with the older one, version 6, if you have a good reason to. If you are already building an application based on your version 6, but version 7 is the newer, so is the one to go. Let's take a look at what we have. Here we have our libraries, and mainly we have our viewer library here. We have the CSS and JS for viewer. And if you check right here, this specifies the version we are going to use. In this case, when you use this wildcard here as 7 dot asterisk, we are going to use the most recent version. In this case, it's 7.51. So if you go with that, if you let it with that, once we upload to the version 7.52, it's going to automatically use the version 7.52 and so on. So this is good for development, but once you move to production, you need to hard code the latest version that you tried, that you tested with your environment, all right? This is something to keep in mind. And also, on our body, we have the navbar containing the Forge logo. And below that, we have 2 columns, 2 main columns. One for our tree of hubs, projects, and all of the related. And on the right, we'll have the actual viewer, all right? The left column is going to change based on the authentication. If you are signed in, we are going to see all of our available hubs. If not, we're going to see a button to sign in, right? That's what we have on our index file. Next, we need to create our main.css file. We go on CSS page, right click, select add, new item. And now we need to select style sheet and change its name to main. Once more, we get rid of the default content and copy the one from our tutorial. Really basic here, just creating space for the navbar, overflow auto for our hubs. Now we create our forge3.js. Under JS folder, we select add, new item. Now is a JavaScript file. JavaScript file right here. Forge3. And we copy and paste the content from our tutorial. Forge3 on our samples is always making the connection between our client-side buttons and functions and our controllers, all right? When the document's ready, we are going to ensure we have signed in, a user signed in, If this is the case, we are going to show the sign out button, refresh hubs button, and we are going to add the reaction, prepare the sign out button. You have more details on this blog post regarding the approach we are using here. Feel free to read it. Also, we are handling the click of the refresh hubs button. And finally, we are going to call this function, prepare user hubs tree. This is going to use our JS tree to render all of our available hubs on our project, on our application. All right, we have a question here. All right, I'll help you in a few minutes and hit it. So first of all, it's going to get called with the root ID, which is a hash. And by that, every time we expand the specific node, we're going to call always this endpoint right here, which is this function right here, retrieving the projects, the top folders for our projects, the folder contents, and all of the versions. We have another question, Tiffany. The www root folder wasn't in my tree. How do we add it to the tree? To add the W root folder, you simply right click on the name of your project. You click add, select add, and go with new folder. And you name it this folder as www root, all right? Was that your question, Tiffany? All right, great. So moving on. So unfortunately, we are dealing with the specific icons depending on the type of our node. We have the topmost node, the root node, which is a hash. We have nodes for hubs, personal hub, Bin360 hubs, and based on the the type of the node, we have different icons, all right? Here we do some sorting for all of our folders, our nodes. And we are going to react to the click with some checking. If you click on a node that represents a version, this version is representing an object inside a bucket. So we can render it using viewer, all right? When I click on a Revit version, when I click on a DWG version of a file, so we are going to call launch viewer. And we have both two options here when we define a viewable ID and when we don't define it. I'm going to tell the difference when we add our new JS file. All right. And the function show user to return the user information. All right, last but not least, Forge Viewer. Again, Forge Viewer, you should go with version 7 unless you have a good reason to use the old one. Let's create the JS. We right click on the page in the folder, select add, new item, JavaScript file, and we select its name, Forge Viewer. Now we copy the content from our tutorial and paste it. It is the function that gets called when we click on a specific version of a file. So it's dealing here with different regions. Depending on the region, you need to provide this option when you are initialize the viewer. We have a global variable to store the viewer object. And here we define it with the div ID, the element, the specific element where the viewer is going to be rendered. And here we are also defining a specific extension, document browser. This extension is useful for changing which viewable you are going to show to your end user. Because let's say I have a Revit file with a 3D view, and all of its sheets available. Which one I'm going to show? And if the user wants to change the viewable, so he can do that through that extension, Autodesk.document browser. Next step is to start it, and finally we load the viewer with our documents, our specific documents, the one that got clicked. We need to pass the function in case of loading gets succeeded, and in case of failure. In case of failure, we're going to log on the console the error code and the error message. And in case of success, we need to define which viewable is going to get shown to the user. So we have two cases here. This function can be called with viewable equals null or not. So if we have a viewable, we are going to use that as default. If not, we are going to use the default geometry, all right? So this covers everything. Now we can run our application. Let me add some breakpoints here. All right, we are retrieving the credentials. And now we are checking the hubs available. As it remembers the last one we used, I used the sample, I guess, yesterday. It's going to try to show us, go through all of the tree until the last seen element, all right? So that's what it is doing here. This column with a specific hub, which is the only one I have. After that, it's going to call it with the last project that I use it. Right here. And then it's going to call it with my specific folder and files. Let me remove this breakpoint here. And now we can see it. All right, here we have my hub. I only added one with this application. My project, I have both of these two options here. Project files, I could use also plans, and I go through the folders until I can find my files. And inside this file, all of these versions are going to be rendered as children of this file. And if I click on a specific version, I'm going to render this viewable on the viewer. All right, let's click right here. Let me use this one first. Again, we don't need to worry about translating the model because B360 does that by default. And this is the document browser extension I spoke about, or talking about. Here we can choose through different viewables. Let's say, let's go to elevation, start sections. Let me see a question, Henrique. Was a person getting the node properties for adding project ID? Okay, Henrique, we want to speak. Henrique might be better. All right. You can speak now, Henrique. Please go on.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Yeah, I was trying within the one that is from the data management, getting a property from the class node. but I didn't get too much success.
What you're trying to achieve exactly?
Yeah, it's because I'm working within the BIM 360 to pick a file so it can be uploaded for design automation. So I was wondering if I have already achieved for that one to be selected by reading the ID and then from the ID of the element getting the urn, so I can get the location for upload, but I didn't manage to, when I click on the forge tree, that something, or I can store in a variable, the project ID for that one. Does that make sense?
You need the project ID and the, sorry, I maybe got
Yeah, the project ID on the version, because when you click on the version one, when you click it, it's just giving you the ID, and I tried to get the project ID as well.
No, I guess as far as I'm not, let me see right here. Let's see through. Let me see it right here. Yes, there's a breakpoint here already.
Yeah.
So. All right, we have the ID, specific ID. Oh, I see it. The href is only a hash. So you want to click, once you click on the specific version, you want
and
to,
get the project ID, yes.
You might be able to get it from the parents. You see, from the parents, you have all of the information you need.
Oh, okay. So I can click from the node has a property parents?
Yes, from data.node when you click it. Here we can see all of the parents, all right? So you have the hub and the project, the hub and the folder, the project and the folder, the project and the subfolder, and so on until you have the project and the item. And last, you have the version, all right?
All right, that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So let's see, let me slide. Yesterday, I showed you how to add an extension. So it will be too repetitive if I do the same today. So let me show you what you can do. If you go to our platform, if you go to forge.autodesk.com, among a lot of features, a lot of how to get support and everything, here under community, you have access to our blog that we have constantly some samples and implementations and a lot of cool stuff. One of that is this multi-refresher. I have the link right here, so I don't have to look further. And the implementation is pretty simple. You can use just one function, and instead of just loading a model, let me activate you. All right, you are back with the audience. Enrique, I forgot. When you load the specific viewable, in this case, right here, if I try to load a different module, it's going to remove the one that I'm seeing and show us the other one. But with this function right here, shown at the blog post, you can render two models at the same time. So let me show you how you can do that. It's pretty simple. You just need to copy this function. So let me add it right here. And we need to change it right here also. I'm doing this based on a question from a customer on how to load multiple modules based on the View Hubs tutorial, this one. This is the question from the customer. Let this load. Okay, so I'll send the link to you later. So we just need to change the initializer by this. We can comment also, so we don't lose it. And it will be, it should be good to use. Let's see if it's good enough. Let me just force refresh it. And now I can render the first file, the one that were seeing before. And if I click on the next one, it's only going to load one more model. All right. Now we can see two models on the same time. If we go to the model browser, we can see both of them here. But there's one thing missing. They are not on the same position. That's due to the global offset of our model. All right. Viewer uses the origin of the geometry of our model. It's like a bounding box, and the origin of the viewer is the center of this bounding box, containing all of our geometries. So we have a property called global offset that relates this origin of the viewer, which is a difference from this origin of the viewer with the origin of the project that we translated, all right? So probably these both have different origins. So we need to ensure they are using the same global offset. For that, we can do a simple step right here. Let's store a variable. This is just for testing purpose. I'm just showing the concept, all right? Let's call it offset, global offset. And in here, once we load a specific model, we can call it with the offset. We can set this offset here. Dot viewer dot model dot get data dot that is global offset. All right. And I think this is good. We need to pass this global offset right here also. Here, we need to pass this. And I can call it with no and with global offsets. These functions deals with that also. If you see, we're passing viewer, URN, transformation, and global offset, and offset for our model. Let me just see all is different here. So global offset here. All right, it should be good now. Let's check it. We need to force refresh. So we get the modified version. Right now I loaded the structure first and now our model. And as you can see, now they are on the same place. All right. And here we have both of our models. I can hide it. No, I hit the other one. If I hide this topography, it is better. Let me hide the topography. Where is it? Here. All right. Pretty cool, right? So that's what I wanted to show you. I see we have a question. That's your turn. Create the index.html, add basic layout, main CS, Forge 3, and Forge Viewer. And questions, we have a question here from Tiffany. What if no folders show up in the list? Mine is showing up empty. So Tiffany, if you have an account and you can see any folders, maybe we have two options here. You can either you don't have permission to see any folders or your project don't have a folder. So you need to check both of them. Can you get the link of the Stack Overflow? Yes, I'm going to send you. Let me get rid of this. It is this one right here. Oh, it's going to be in this case. I sent you the link through the chat window. And I think that's it, right? Sublime. So Tiffany, getting back to you, you should verify if you have permission through the user interface of your account, your hub, if you have permission to see any folders, or if your project has any folder, all right? So please check that. Forest, it is on chat window. You can see that. Okay, awesome. No more questions? Any doubts? All good? So tomorrow, we will customize the viewer. We are going to create an extension and add dashboards related to our application, to our model. And on the next day, Thursday, the last day of our bootcamp, we are going to modify our designs using design automation. If you need support, reach us through Stack Overflow. You can also reach us through our support email, forge.help@autodesk.com. And here I leave you with the rest of your day. And I hope to see you all tomorrow, all right? See you.